In part 1 of Chapter 11, we will talk about the importance of project risk management. But before we get into that, we will provide a very high-level definition of project risk management. So project risk management is the art and science of identifying, analyzing, and responding to risk throughout the life of a project and in the best interest of meeting project objectives. So this is a rough, high-level definition of risk management in the context of project management. Now, unfortunately, risk management is often overlooked in projects, but it can help improve project success rate by helping select good projects, determine project scope that is likely to be manageable, and also developing realistic estimates, let's say, about the timeline, about the resource needed, about the budget, and so forth. So risk management is overlooked, but it's very important because it can increase the chances of succeeding with a particular IT project. Now, there are many studies that show the need to improve project risk management and understanding of project risk management among project managers. For example, there is a study that shows that risk has the lowest maturity rating of all knowledge areas of project management. And then there are a number of similar studies that kind of show the same thing, that out of all areas of knowledge required for a project manager, risk management has the lowest ranking, meaning project managers often have very little understanding of risk in the context of project management. So this is the summary of the first study that is mentioned. So here you have knowledge areas under the umbrella of project management, and here you have various industries, and here you have ratings. So as you can see, a risk, which is one of the knowledge areas under project management, has the lowest ranking across several industries mentioned here. But studies also show the benefits of following good software risk management practices. And this is an example of a study that basically shows that if you practice risk management, then you can avoid certain issues. For example, 80% of survey respondents in the study report that project risk management helps them to anticipate and avoid problems, also prevent surprises, meaning unexpected problems that arise during the duration of the project. It also helps them to improve the ability to negotiate with stakeholders, with vendors, so that the negotiation process is based on risk estimates, so that risk is fairly, first of all, is understood, and then fairly is distributed and shared across different stakeholders. Also, practicing risk management helps project managers meet customer commitments, reduce schedule slips, meaning not delivering things on time, reduce cost overruns, and only a small percentage of survey respondents reported that risk management does not help them with anything, right? So it's a very small fraction of the entire sample. So as you can see from this data, risk management is often overlooked by project managers, but it can help a lot, when it comes to reducing chances of future problems, completing the project within budget and on time, and meeting customer expectations. Just one example of an event that led to an increased attention to risks and risk management, not only among project managers, but also probably worldwide across many companies and industries. So you may have remembered the financial crisis that happened around 2008 that was driven by the real estate bubble. So many banks were heavily invested in mortgages and various instruments derived from those mortgages. A lot of people, meaning consumers, residents in the United States, took out a lot of loans to finance houses that they could not afford. So eventually, those people who took out mortgages that they could not afford stopped paying on their mortgages. Because of that, banks who gave out those mortgages, and also investment companies who bought various financial investment instruments developed by banks from those mortgages, they started failing. They started feeling the pressure, financial pressure. A lot of them failed. The real estate market was in a complete mess, especially in the state of California, where the bubble was the most dramatic, the most pronounced. So you probably remember there were all those debates whether the federal government should step in and bail out those banks and financial institutions. Eventually they did, and they offered the so-called stimulus package. I believe it was around $700 or $800 billion to save the economy, to save the banking system. Now, according to a follow-up survey of 316 financial service executives, more than 70% of respondents believe that the losses stemming from the credit crisis were largely due to failures to address risk management issues. In other words, a lot of banks, a lot of executives did not understand the risks that are in there, according to this survey, right? They didn't understand the risks that are created by those, expanding mortgages and growing real estate prices and real estate instruments. Although personally, I don't believe in that. I think executives of banks and financial institutions, they're not that dumb. They understand that every bubble will burst eventually. I think the real answer is not ignorance but greed. In other words, all those executives, they were packaging those mortgages because real estate was growing every year and everybody was greedy to make a lot of money. I remember around the time Warren Buffett was saying that he never buys anything related, any investment instruments related to mortgages, because he says it's so complicated and all it takes is for the real estate market to slow down and the entire system built around real estate and those mortgages will collapse. So he never invested in anything, and he was right. I think the only people who were ignorant were probably regular consumers who somehow felt that real estate prices will never increase, they will never lose their jobs, they will be able to pay out those $500,000, $1 million mortgages with a small salary, something that doesn't make any sense regardless of anything. So failure to understand those risks led to a lot of financial problems among consumers, I think, and among banks, whether it was due to ignorance or greed, and eventually the entire economy collapsed. And it started recovering only a few years after 2008. I would say somewhere starting 2011, 12, things started to pick up and become better. By the way, right now we're at another peak. This peak is driven by a variety of things, but again, it will not continue like that. I mean, the economy will level off. The growth in stock prices, the growth in employment will level off. And by definition, that's the natural law of life. The peak that we're experiencing right now will be followed by a decline. Now, and by the way, the study identified several challenges in implementing risk management, including data and company culture issues. So a lot of companies simply ignore risk. They don't have a culture about brainstorming about different possibilities. Some companies do. There's a great book on the subject of risk, actually several books by Nassim Taleb. One is called Fooled by Randomness, the other one is called, the second book is called Black Swan, and the third book is called Anti-Fragile. So those books are about the role of risks in our life and how people don't understand that. Now, Nassim Taleb, the author of this book, said that the reason he became so much interested in risk, the partial reason for him becoming so much interested in risk was his boss in one of the hedge funds in New York. And he was a Frenchman, and he was obsessed with risk. And he didn't have a scientific approach to risk management, but he would get once in a while all of his associates behind a table at a restaurant, and they will start brainstorming about various future risks or possibilities that can lead to serious financial problems for their hedge fund. And believe it or not, according to Nassim Taleb, at one point they even discussed the possibility of a plane crashing into their building and how it will impact their company and their operations, something that happened during 9/11, as you all well know. So yeah, there are some companies that do have a risk analysis culture. Others, they're overly optimistic. They believe that nothing will ever go wrong, and that often catches them off guard. Now you may think, well, why we're talking about all those things? Because this course is not about stock market. It's not about economic cycles. We're talking about project management. Well, I believe 100%. I believe 100% that the economy nowadays is so global. Everything is connected to everything. And I remember, this was the time when I was looking for a job, and it was very hard to find a job because a lot of financial institutions were going through very hard times, and everything's connected to everything. So when banks are not doing well, other companies are not doing well, including universities, including IT companies. So I remember this was the time when a lot of IT projects got canceled, right? So that's the connection. Because of this financial crisis, a lot of IT projects got canceled, because a lot of companies, they view IT as something that is more for luxury, and new IT projects are carried out only when there's a surplus in budgets. So yeah, companies were canceling IT projects. It was very hard to find a job in the IT industry at that time. So I mean, I'm sure that a lot of project managers who were initiating projects before 2008, they didn't even think about real estate bubble and all those things. They probably thought that it had no relevance to the IT industry, to their IT projects, but eventually it did. Eventually it did impact the entire economy, I would say the entire global economy, and the granular impact of this financial crisis was cancellation of IT projects, something that you could have could or could not imagine, back in the years before 2008. But again, as a project manager, you're responsible for the entire project, and it doesn't matter whether it fails due to internal or external reason. It's always worthwhile to brainstorm about those risks, including those broad risks that come from an external environment, such as a financial crisis. So this is why thinking about risk is so important, and thinking about risk not only on the inside of the project boundaries, but also on the outside of the project.